love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan, and usually my producer, as you know, is Ryan Smith. Unfortunately, he's in mourning. He had a tragic loss in his family. His aunt in Florida tragically was killed in an auto accident, guy going the wrong way, unbelievable. So he's in mourning. He's down there with his family, and subbing is Pat McGuire. Pat, good to have you on the show. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Happy to be here. And yeah, we're sending love to Ryan and his family for sure. Everyone here from Big Play, from me, from you, we're sending love to Ryan for sure.
Yeah. Talked to him yesterday. He informed me he'd be leaving, and he was really down. He was close to his aunt, so our deepest sympathies go out to Ryan and his family. Well, we have a lot to cover. Curtis Danburg, Vice President of Communications, Community Affairs and Impact, will be with us in the second segment to preview, of course, the big series coming up between our Guardians and the winner of Houston and Detroit, and I'm going to get to that in a minute here in the opening segment. But we also have a lot to cover, and I do want to start with the Browns game against Vegas. I've told you they were going to win. The Browns were going to beat Vegas. There's no question in my mind that they were going to win that game. And then I threw a caveat in there. I said, if they don't miss my next show. Do you realize how rare it is for a team to make the playoffs after a 1-3 start? Are you aware of that? Particularly if you look at our schedule following the bye week. I have emphasized throughout, the Browns must be in first place or have a good enough record to where they are in a position coming out of that bye week, because that schedule after the bye week is just very, very difficult. So we're already, and then who would have, they're the surprise team of the NFL. Our next game is against the Washington Commanders. They're the biggest surprise. There's always a team that you don't expect is going to excel and be very good the following year. And the same thing holds true with a team that was very good, and it's the opposite. They have a disappointing season. This was not Watson's fault, by the way, this loss. This was not Watson's fault. Vegas entered this game with the NFL's worst rushing statistics. Worst. But the so-called Browns' vaunted defense allowed the Raiders to rush for 152 yards in this game and 2 rushing touchdowns. Minshew was very efficient offensively for them. The Browns can't get Chubb back fast enough. They can't seem to gain 100 yards on the ground without him. The combination of Ford and these guys, they can't seem to do it. And the Browns are geared for that. So it's a very distressing outcome. There were some questionable calls, obviously the touchdown callback, everything like that, but it's still the bottom line. It shouldn't have been that difficult. The Raiders stink. The Giants stink. They're not going to be 500 teams. And let alone we've lost the first 2 home games and now this one too. So, Pat, I'm very disturbed about the Browns, and I really think that they're behind the 8 ball now with this forthcoming game against them. Washington's a 3-point favorite, justifiably.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Because, and you know, you heard Ryan in this seat talking about it too. Like, this was supposed to be the easy part, Bruce. we open as 3-point underdogs to Washington in Washington. That is unbelievable. You never would have thought that. And it's funny, too, because you talk about that run defense for the Browns. Alexander Mattison and Zamir White are running on this Browns defense. Myles Garrett, whoever else you got in there. I wouldn't have thought that compared to, Deontay Foreman and Jerome Ford as well. Just the running attack for the Browns paired against their running defense being so bad, never would have thought it.
And we've had a lot of injuries. I think we're the most injured team right now in the NFL. But they didn't have Adams or Crosby. So you can't use that as an excuse. You could make a case that Barry has compiled the best depth chart the Browns have had in, decades. And that's a key in the NFL because every NFL team sustains injuries. So you go to your second stringers and if need be your third stringers. But this was very disturbing, and as a result, the Browns are up against it. Washington's coming off an unbelievable win against Arizona, and so I'm really disturbed about it. I think that the Browns, if they lose this game, can almost kiss the playoffs goodbye.
Yeah, Bruce, did you see in the Washington-Arizona game, did you see who got the game ball from Dan Quinn after that Washington win? Former Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury. He's the offensive coordinator in Washington, gets the game ball. Unbelievable.
Right. Unbelievable is right. And Cincinnati, as I predicted, would get their first win against hapless Carolina, even though Carolina gave them a battle before all was said and done, but it was still a 34-24 victory for Cincinnati. At least Indianapolis did their job for us in our division and defeated Pittsburgh and handed them their first loss of the season, 27. And that wasn't easy. How about Joe Flacco in that game? How about Richardson going down and Flacco coming in? And pew, 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 pew. Pinpoint accuracy. Really looked good. What is he? Is he 39, 40 years old? My God. All right. Baltimore destroyed Buffalo. Buffalo was due for a letdown. They were off to a great start at 3-0, but Jackson had 2 touchdowns. And Henry, all of a sudden, 2 weeks in a row. Now, this game, he rushed for 199 yards. You knew Baltimore would come back, so they're 2-2. Buffalo's still in good shape in that division, especially at 3-1. And with Tua going down with Miami and Rodgers and the Jets are going to be a joke. So they're in good shape. Kansas City defeated the LA The Chargers this year, I thought with Harbaugh and Herbert combining that would be, a combination that would launch them into serious contention to represent the AFC. But this loss to Kansas City, now the Chiefs are 4-0, clicking on all cylinders. They look just as good, if not better than ever, and they've got more offensive weapons now, too. Amazing. Houston defeated Jacksonville. Jacksonville's in a real sorry way. 24-20, and 3-1 now is Stroud and company. Boy, does he look good or what? Huh? Over in the NFC, Detroit, a winner over Seattle, 42-29. That's Seattle's first loss. Detroit now 3-1. Seattle 3-1. Minnesota defeating loveless Green Bay, 31-29. Good game, but Vikings are 4-0. And how many predicted that they would win that division? And they're far away from doing it, but still, with Detroit, with Love out, although the Bears are going to be competitive, I think, with Caleb Williams getting acclimated to the NFL. But Minnesota's 4-0. And then Tampa Bay, a winner over Philadelphia. Baker Mayfield. Boy, I hate having to admit that I'm wrong, although I do it. I've done it my entire career when I'm wrong. Far from perfect, who is? But I just, I was never going to believe, and I still don't believe, that Mayfield is going to win a Super Bowl. It's happened where you can 4 or 5 exceptions to the rule in the history of the Super Bowl that a non-championship quarterback has won it. I don't consider him a championship quarterback, but he's playing like one right now. I'll give him credit for that. And so Tampa Bay 3-1, Philadelphia, the media there is going crazy. This week in the NFL, Baltimore's at Cincinnati, and the Ravens are a 2.5-point favorite against Burrow and company. Good news there is somebody's got to lose. Dallas at Pittsburgh. Boy, I mentioned I mentioned the Philadelphia fans. Can you imagine what the talk shows are like in Dallas? And Jones behind the scenes? You couldn't air what he's saying. You know that. But, Dallas is a 2.5-point dog against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas beats them. I really wouldn't, because Pittsburgh's offense leaves a lot to be desired, even with Fields being efficient. But then Russell Wilson, too, is right there. So Buffalo's -1 at Houston. That's going to be an interesting game. Stroud versus Allen. And then Tampa Bay at Atlanta with Mayfield. And that's a challenge. I picked Atlanta to win that division. So we'll see. Tampa right now is looking like the team to beat in that division. So there's our take on the Browns and the NFL. And let me get to college ball. And I know, Pat, that you produce the Bobby Carpenter show. Alabama made a statement the other day against Georgia.
Unbelievable, Bruce.
I mean, to jump out to a 28-0 lead
And
early
still
in the
hold
second
on.
quarter, but I give Georgia credit for battling back. They didn't give up at all. Beck, 27 of 50 for 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he did have 3 picks. They were costly. Milroe, 27-33, 374 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Beck is 16-2 in his college career. Both losses have been against Alabama. And Alabama with DeBoer doesn't seem like they've missed a beat now that Saban has retired. So Alabama has been launched into the number 1 position in the country, and justifiably, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you called it before this game. You said Alabama is back. They looked unbelievable on that win against Wisconsin, which you talked about in the show. And credit to Jalen Milroe for staying, too. Because in this new era where a new coach comes in, he could have easily transferred out, gotten a lot of money. Maybe Alabama was the best situation for him in general. But in the NIL era, just a lot of credit goes to him. He didn't complain. He waited his time, and now he's showing out. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, Bama. And Georgia's going to be on a mission now. They're going to be on a mission. Ohio State, of course, was Texas' big win over Mississippi State. Ohio State should have been idle. I mean, they murdered Michigan State. Tennessee is at Arkansas this week. Georgia, 24.5-point favorite at home against Auburn. Oregon's number 6. They trounced UCLA. Now they play Michigan State, big favorite. Penn State had a tussle with Illinois. Bielema and company may be for real in the Champaign, because Penn State had all they could handle with the Fighting Illini. They now play UCLA. Miami of Florida, a win over Virginia Tech. Miami, 10.5-point favorite at California. Although they had a tough game against Virginia Tech, Missouri will play at A&M. They're a dog in that game. And then you've got Michigan with their win over Minnesota, and they tussled. That was not an easy win for them against the Gophers. They travel to Washington, and they're a 2.5-point dog. How do you figure that one, Pat?
Yeah, it's weird Big Ten time now, but Minnesota had that onside kick. I don't know if you saw that at the end of the game. They were called for an offside. They recovered the onside kick with about 30 to go. They called him by a millimeter offside. And if that's not at the Big House, if that's at Minnesota, he's onside.
Right.
I don't care what anybody says. That's an absolute escape for Michigan, and they're lucky to do it.
They really were. All right, I want to get to the baseball playoffs where Detroit shocked Houston 3-1. Skubal, 6 innings, shutout ball, 18-4 during the regular season. Cy Young candidate, 2.39 ERA, .92 WHIP, 192 innings pitched, 228 strikeouts. Amazing. Allowed 4 hits, a walk, 6 strikeouts. Wow, just tremendous. Teams that win game 1 of a best-of-3 series have gone on to win 14 out of 16 times since the start of this format in the Major League Baseball playoffs. Skubal needed just 5 pitches to retire the Astros in order in the first inning. He did the same thing in the 5th. Retired the first 6 Astros he faced. And he threw 17 first pitch strikes out of 23 possibilities. Detroit scored 3 runs in the second inning off Framber Lopez, and that was all they needed, despite the rally by Houston in the 9th inning. So, a big win for Detroit. Kansas City, likewise, pitching. 1-0 victory over Baltimore. Lefty Cole Reagans fired 6 scoreless innings, 8 strikeouts, no walks. And of the 10 teams to make the play, hay fever. Of the 10 teams to take game 1 on the road in the best-of-3 series since Major League Baseball started this format, 8 of them have gone on to win, and 7 have swept. MVP candidate Bobby Witt accounted for the game's only run with an RBI single in the top of the 6th inning. During the regular season, Witt hit .332, 32 home runs, and 109 RBIs with 31 stolen bases. Mets, a winner over Milwaukee, come from behind effort. The Mets blew the game wide open with a 5-run 5th. Severino, former Yankee, settled in after allowing 4 runs through 4. He worked 2 scoreless innings, and then the pen finished the job by shutting out the Brew Crew in the final 3 to score the game 1 victory. Big win there. And San Diego, a 4-0 winner over Atlanta, as the Braves were the only road team to not win their game 1 of the best-of-3 wild card round. Fernando Tatis belted a 2-run home run in the first inning off Smith Sawyer, and that turned out to be all the Padres needed because they took command of the series by winning game 1. Michael King was brilliant, shutting out the Braves through 7, a whopping 12 strikeouts. No walks. He allowed just 5 hits in the game. Unbelievable the way these playoffs have started off. So the Guardians will host the winner of the Houston-Detroit series Saturday. It's the first game. And when we come back in segment 2, Guardians exec Curtis Danburg will join us to preview what hopefully will be history to be made, especially since 1948. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Great to have you back. Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. I have said for decades on my various shows, this is my favorite time of the year because you've got the baseball playoffs, the start of the college and the pro football seasons. Fall, autumn, in northeastern Ohio is fantastic. I love fall golf. But it's particularly special when our Indians, now Guardians, are in the postseason. And that's the case this year. And that's why we've got my good buddy, Curtis Danburg, Vice President of Community Affairs and Impact, joining us in this segment on our show. And maybe we can get that curse off our shoulders since 1948 this postseason.
Well, I agree. This is there's nothing better than October baseball. And we're here. We were here 2 years ago, but this year feels a little different. And I keep saying that what happened on opening day changed the aura around the city, and I hope it breaks the curse, because something that happened to happen in 400 plus years was the totality that was the solar eclipse on opening day. And I was kind of going to these meetings and planning. I was like, what is the big deal about this? But experiencing that at Progressive Field on opening day, when that temperature dropped 20 minutes and then the roar of the crowd, And then just the way the season is mapped out and played out, like there's something different. And that's what I'm holding my fingers crossed, that maybe that was the dynamic that changed, that has been over our organization since 1948.
This is a special team, but I have been asked on and off the air like crazy, Curtis. Well, what do you think? What do you think our chances are with the postseason? Or, is it going to be the same? And we can't beat the Yankees, all of this. And my response is, hey, we've got as great a chance as anyone to win the World Series. And here's why. Last season, before the playoffs began, who would have predicted Texas and Arizona in the World Series?
100%. And Texas, they lost in, was it mid-August to early September, 16 of 20 games. They went from a 6.5 game lead to a 3-game deficit, and they barely got in. They had a chance to get home field for that first round, lost that game, had to go on the road. It's all luck. It's all about getting on a roll, and hopefully that starts Saturday for us.
97 was a perfect example.
100%.
Our record wasn't that impressive that year, but we got hot at the right time in August and carried it in.
We pulled our socks high for Jim Thomey's birthday, and the rest is history. So
I love the way this team played all season long, especially as young as they are. If they're not the youngest, they're close to the youngest team in the entire major leagues.
We are.
And a young manager by vote, in vote. But I love the way they play the game. They're like an old-style National League club. They run the bases well. They hit singles and doubles. They get a little bit of power when needed. We've hit for more power than anybody anticipated this year, that's for sure. And, of course, the bullpen is the best in baseball.
And that's been the anchor. I mean, if you think about the anchor of the team, it really has been the bullpen. I mean, statistically, one of the best bullpen seasons ever. Not just our history, but all of baseball. And, you know, Stephen Vogt made the joke early in spring training saying, you know, Tito set the foundation. He's like, I'm not changing. I'm just maybe putting new paint color on the rooms in the house, but not adjusting too much. And he's kind of continued that momentum that Tito set and, you know, made some tweaks. I think the being a little bit more aggressive in the box with the, you know, hitters counts. Has allowed us to have a little bit more power and take those gambles. So little tweaks here and there, but it's been fun to see the success for the whole team and the leadership. And I mean, they have a first-year manager. I think I saw a stat. I think there's 4 or 5 first-year managers in the postseason. All together, which is pretty
right.
incredible, and us being one of them.
Yeah, and I like the way that he has flip-flopped everybody except Clase in that bullpen. He's got a different guy work on the 8th inning one game, and then a different guy work on the 7th inning, 6th inning, etc. I love that. And he's also dickered with the lineup a little bit, too, which I don't mind at all. I thought the best offseason move, Curtis, was retaining Carl Willis. Because even though Vogt would have been hired by another ball club, and he was highly thought of, he's still a rookie manager.
Yep.
And even though he was a catcher, he's still a rookie manager. And to have arguably the best pitching coach in the major leagues at his side come 5th, 6th inning, and that paid out. That proved to be the point all season long.
I agree. And Steven said that from day one, and that hasn't changed. You know, the pitching's kind of our cornerstone of the organization, and having that solidified person leading that and leading that pitching group, Carl, and especially considering the challenges we went through in our rotation. Think about, I mean, all 5 guys in our rotation to start the season in spring training were all gone.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
And we still go out and win 90-plus games.
Yeah.
So I
Which
agree
bodes
with
well
you.
for the future, too, because...
Oh, absolutely.
And the offseason pick, Boyd, and Cobb's been hobbled a little bit, but he showed us glimpses of stardom. And Lane Thomas. People were saying, oh, this guy's up. But I said, hey, I tried to get him on my fantasy team, and I was outbid. Give him time to get adjusted to the American League. And look,
it's not easy to change midstream and move your family and new organization and all that. So that's been big. The other person I'll point out, too, it's hard to put a value on is Austin Hedges. From a leadership standpoint, look at where we were 2 years ago. He leaves. He's a part of Texas win the World Series. We bring him back. And while he doesn't play much and batting average doesn't represent, what he represents in that clubhouse means a ton. And we've seen that time and time again. And especially with a rookie manager. Having somebody kind of leading the troops within the clubhouse has a lot of value.
I'm so excited. First game now is, what, 1 o'clock on Saturday?
1:08 on Saturday, and then 4:08 game 2.
What's all entailed with the big day, the big weekend? Take us through that. And of course the change this year. All three, if it goes 3 games, all 3 will be in Cleveland.
Correct.
Oh no, 2-2-1. I'm thinking
game
of
5.
I'm thinking of the wild card round here now, which
game
is
5 would be back here on Saturday. So we'll see, but we will open gates 2 hours before the game. Prior to gates, we will have some activity and entertainment on the plaza, Gateway Plaza. Obviously, the pageantry, just like opening day and postseason, we'll have the giant flag. We'll have the player introductions and working through the different anthem performers and who's going to yell play ball. And
have you announced that yet? Who it is?
We have not. So we're working through some things.
Would you care to make this platform your announcement?
Not yet. Not yet. I
felt obligated. What the heck? I got nothing to lose.
I'll tease one thing. In game 2, the anthem performer is going to be somebody that's near and dear to my heart. And I'll leave that at that.
Oh, I got to make some phone calls and inquire further about Curtis's personal likes. So the other thing, I was so pleased, Curtis, to finally see the fans appreciate this team, because attendance this year was really good.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we are very grateful for the support we got all season long. It was a combination of factors. We get off to a hot start. You have City Connect. You have the new Paul Davis Pennant District, the new Terrace Garden with the new renovations for this year in Phase 1. But it's been awesome. I mean, 2 million fans, first time since 2017. And in fact, we got over the mark where we was the most attendance we've had since 2008. 14 sellouts, the most since 2001. Think about that. I mean, that tremendous support from our fan base all season long, and it was a lot of fun at the ballpark, and we're hoping to continue that.
Well, from Paul right on down the line, the renovations, this park opened as Jacobs Field in 94. And when you think of how many new baseball stadiums have been built since then, and when we were built was when Camden Yards came out, and there were several others right in that time span. And when you think of all those other stadiums, and here the organization has renovated time and time again, and every time it seems to have worked splendidly to accommodate the fans, and it's really and I think the population and the average attendance for our market.
Yes, 100%. And basically, from a baseball facility standpoint, we're the 9th oldest now, which is hard to believe. And to your point, I mean, both Texas and Atlanta have had 2 parks since we've built Jacobs, now Progressive Field. So it is a special place, and that's why extending the lease was so important, to maintain that. And we're in a lease, for another 13 plus years, and have the ability to add another 10 on top of that because of what a special place it is. So Phase 1's done. We still have more to come this offseason. We're hopefully not going to begin the work on the clubhouse and other areas of the ballpark and the new Carnegie Club behind home plate until November. That's the hope. So we've been working on contingency plans with the construction on how do we make that work, because we need to be ready by April 8th of 25 for opening day.
Sure. And regardless of how far we go, I mean, again, we touched on this earlier, who gets hot at this particular time of the playoffs. But the beauty is the youth of this team, and how many, the vast majority of this roster are locked into contracts.
Yes. That was one of the reasons of adding Lane Thomas, is he's under contract for next year. So that was important. I mean, we only have 3 free agents at the end of the year, with Hedges and Cobb and Boyd. So, I mean,
think of that.
The success of our team is built on that player development system, and everybody we've homegrown, and that's going to continue to come. There's a lot of talent. Getting the number 1 pick in Travis Bazzana, and getting all that pool of money. We added a lot of talent into our system this past July. So it's fun to see, and hopefully we can continue that role. And one of the competitive advantages we talked about is the bullpen for this postseason.
Yeah.
The fact that we got that number 2 seed, and we have a home game and off day, a home game and an off day, I think is a competitive advantage for us with
Yes.
the team that we have.
Because we may have to depend on that pen so much.
Correct.
Because all we need to do is get to the 5th or 6th inning with this bullpen. It's just so spectacular. And I love the kids, Noel and the other way. We thought, okay, you can pitch around Jose. Now Naylor's come into his own. But you had these two kids who you would like to think optimistically will get more acclimated and become better. Now all of a sudden you've got 4 power guys in that middle of that lineup.
Hopefully John Kensey could be the this year's version of Oscar Gonzalez. And one swing of the bat can change the series. So he has that power potential. We've seen it all year long, and hopefully he can bring that to the table.
Well, hopefully we can advance and really take advantage of what has been such a fun year. That's the other thing in conclusion here, Curtis. They've been a fun team to watch all season long. They don't give up. Even if they're behind come 7th inning, they're a good 2-out clutch hitting team, which I adore. And you can't help but just get, pull for them because they have a never say die attitude no matter what the situation. And if they do suffer a heartbreaking loss, they bounce back the next day like it's nothing.
I think it's a great point. And there's probably a little bit of youth. You don't know any better, but it's also leadership, and it's also the quality and character of players that we have on this team. And hopefully that'll, show through as we embark on another postseason run here.
Well,
Saturday.
another big part of this is the quality of the front office, and this guy here is part of that. That's for sure. Curtis Danburg, Vice President of the Cleveland Guardians. Go Guards!
Go Guards!
No
let's,
gifts
let's
for
break
us.
that curse.
No gifts for us this time. Last time you had hats and shirts and everything else. I mean, I know at the golf outing I got some nice gifts, but come on.
It's postseason time. We're focused on baseball.
Thanks,
We'll
Curtis.
take care of you in the future.
Always
Go Guards.
appreciate it. Ask Bruce segment next. Bonus time, which running here on the Big Play Sports Network. Thanks to Curtis Danburg for joining us in studio for segment 2. Before we get into the Ask Bruce segment, I want to talk about Pete Rose's passing. But before we do that, Pat, Curtis coming in, optimism galore. I think more so guarded optimism, granted. Always you must be guarded when it comes to the Indians or now the Guardians. But this is a new era. This is a different type of team. And when you look at, 95, power, more power, even the 97 club, and that was a different team in 16. But this group here just plays a very entertaining brand of ball.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be, like you said, guarded with your optimism here in this town. It's that's for sure. But I'm definitely encouraged with this team. There were some days there in August, the dog days of the season, where I was a little bit low on them and didn't think they had what it takes, but they turned it back on in September. They're playing good ball right now. I think relying on the pitching travels is, how they say defense travels in basketball, football, that type of thing. Pitching travels. So that's one thing that we can really hang our hat on, and I'm really excited for this playoffs.
Well, what I didn't bring up to Curtis, I mentioned to him that, this team can be down in the 7th inning and they'll come back. They don't give up. On the bigger picture, they were tied by Kansas City. They were tied. And they came right back and then just started another win streak. And Kansas City went into the doldrums, and unfortunately for them, had a losing streak. They still qualified for the playoffs, and they won their first game yesterday against Baltimore. But another perfect example, Pat.
Yeah, how about the Twins too? Bring them up. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah.
But the way that Kansas City is playing, I think they're kind of like what Curtis was talking about, where they're a young team who doesn't know what they don't know yet. There's not a lot of fear in that team, but I like the way that the Guardians are going to play as well, because they've got enough veterans as well with these young guys to really rely on that. And Stephen Vogt, I think, is going to be tremendous on this team.
Oh, yeah. It's shoo-in for Manager of the Year. All right. Well, we lost Pete Rose this past week. The Cincinnati Reds all-time leader in games played, 2,722. Plate appearances, 12,344. Runs scored, 1,741. Hits, 3,358. Singles, 2,490. Doubles, 601. Walks, 1,210. He was a leadoff man. He stole bases. He played about every position on the field except pitcher and catcher. He was all over. I don't know if he ever played center field. I'd have to look at that. He played certainly a lot of left and a lot of right besides all of the infield. He may not have ever played shortstop either, but he certainly played first base later in his career with Philadelphia, second base, third base. Just an amazing, amazing player. All-time hits leader, 4,256, 1963. National League Rookie of the Year. 1973. National League Most Valuable Player. Lost to the New York Mets in the playoffs that year for the pennant. That was the bottle throwing incident in Shea Stadium, if you recall. Sparky Anderson pulled the team off the field. He won 3 batting titles. He had a 17-time All-Star. Twice he won Golden Glove Awards, and again, playing different positions. 1970 was the All-Star game in which he had the collision with Ray Fosse. It was an exhibition game. It was played in Cincinnati at Riverfront in front of his home fans. He scored the game-winning run in the bottom half of the 12th inning, and Ray Fosse, who was kind of considered like the Johnny Bench of the American League here in Cleveland, was never the same after that. I interviewed Fosse about that. There was a lot of bitterness throughout all the years. He had mellowed in that bitterness when I interviewed him, which is now quite a few years ago, too. Of course, he was part of the Big Red Machine, who won 5 divisional crowns. In 1970, they made it to the World Series. They lost in 5 games to the Baltimore Orioles. In 1972, they made it again to the World Series, and they lost in 7 games in a great World Series against the Oakland A's of Charlie Finley. And Rose, of course, was a tremendous player in the postseason as well. 1975, he won an MVP award in the World Series. 1975, World Series victory against the Boston Red Sox with Carlton Fisk and everybody. That was in 7 games against Boston. 1976, they swept the New York Yankees in 4 games. In 1980, he won the World Series again as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. They beat Baltimore. In 1978, he had a 44-game hit streak, 3rd longest in history, and the closest since DiMaggio set the record in 1941. Rose was nicknamed Charlie Hustle. And I've said for decades, dads, managers of Little League players, get video of Pete Rose. Sit down those kids. Show them video of Pete Rose playing and say, this is the example of how to play the game. Charlie Hustle, Pete Rose, one of the greatest of all time, dead at the age of 83. And by gosh, they better induct him into the Hall of Fame now. Ask Bruce segment. Fire away, Pat.
Yeah, and it's a difficult one. We started right there with Pete Rose. With the fans of Cincinnati and Philadelphia, how do you think they're supposed to feel right now? What do you think those fan bases are saying in terms of should he be in the Hall of Fame? I think the fans want him in. If you go down to Cincinnati, I'm very close. I went to Xavier. Ryan and I have a little Xavier Cincinnati
the
beef,
rivalry with Ryan, yeah.
I can tell you firsthand that the fans down there, they want him in the Hall of Fame, and I think baseball fans want him in there. So what is your thought there, Bruce? Should he be in the Hall of Fame?
There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that he ever gambled while he was a player. None. It was when he was a manager. Well, he's not being considered induction into the Hall of Fame as a manager, but as a player. So explain that to me.
Exactly.
It was a personal vendetta that Giamatti, who passed shortly after banning him, had against Rose. And Rose didn't help his own cause anyway by lying and having the demeanor that he had, less than being known as a great, outgoing, friendly personality. He didn't have that reputation at all.
Yeah, so next question coming from Twitter is, with Alabama and Georgia, Alabama jumps up to number 1 with that classic game. So the SEC and Big Ten, there's news coming out today that they're going to try to do a schedule, like a coordinated type of schedule where they play each other. Do you think this loses all of the tradition of college football? Do you think there's any tradition remaining, or is it just the SEC's tradition kind of glomming onto the Big Ten, or what do you see there?
I think it hurts. I think it contributes to just exactly what the writer sent in to us. Yes, I think it's taking away from the tradition. You know, when I had Bill Hancock on several times throughout my career, the head of the committee, he would always emphasize we have the most important regular season of any sport. And it was true. But now that's diminished because, again, as I've given the example here on our show, if Michigan and Ohio State play this year, Michigan's already got one loss. We're undefeated. They've got one loss. Whoever loses is still in the playoff, right? Whoever loses is still in the playoff. Now, the rivalry is the rivalry, and there'll be a lot of pride. But it's not do or die. You're out of the playoff if you lose the game like last year, Ohio State. Or even a better example was Georgia and Alabama for the SEC championship last year. Alabama beat Georgia. You're going to tell me Georgia wasn't one of the top 4 teams in the country last year after losing to Alabama? Give me a break.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So we've got ALDS. We talked a lot of guards with Curtis Danburg in here, but our next question comes from Twitter. With the off days in the ALDS, games, a day off in between games, the Guardians will have they'll have a break in between so they can break up their starting pitchers. What is your desired starting rotation? I know they're going to rely on that bullpen, but what's your starting rotation envisioned for this series?
I like Boyd. He's got the experience. He's a veteran. He's not going to blow anybody away, but he's crafty, kind of like a Jamie Moyer type, knows where to pick his spots in the zone, keep the hitter's eye contact at different levels. If he's got his control, which usually he does now that he's come back, especially since all these this surgery, I like Boyd. I think Bybee, if you have Cobb healthy, I say stick Cobb in there too. He's another veteran. He beat us when he was with Tampa Bay, if you recall, when Tito's first year was with us. So I like those veterans. I like Bybee. Lively's another one. Keep Williams in there for long relief.
Yeah, another guards question coming here. So Sports Illustrated and some other publications posted their most important players list of most impactful in this postseason's top 40, right? So we talked about this on the Fontana show, did a poll as well. Emmanuel Clase coming at the number 7 spot, and number 11 was Jose Ramirez. Do you see those guys being equal, or do you see either one of those having more value to this team as we head into the playoffs?
Well, I think they have equal value, although when it comes down to crunch time, the 9th inning are the 3 toughest outs to get. Who's ahead of them? Do you have that list?
Yeah, there was Bryce Harper was in there, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, some of the bigger star names, which is kind of the Cleveland treatment. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto as well, yep. Zach Wheeler as well.
Zach Wheeler, huh?
Yeah, Wheeler I thought was interesting because Clase is dominant. We'll see how many innings he pitches this postseason, but yeah. Wheeler
Nothing
can be
against
dominant.
Wheeler. He's a starting pitcher and a great one. But when you look at what Clase accomplished, I mean, my goodness gracious. And Jose is Jose. I mean, you know, 2 phenomenal. Yeah, that's a tough one. But, gosh, God love them both for what their contribution has been to our great team this year.
Yeah, so our last one here, Bruce. Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper, a lot of drama surrounding these wide receivers. And again, so Devontae Adams didn't play this past week against the Browns. Rumor is going out that he is requesting a trade from the Raiders, trying to reunite with his former quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people are speculating with Amari Cooper's name. Do you see any movement on the wide receiver front?
Well, I don't blame Adams for wanting to get out of Vegas. Not because he's lost a lot of money at Bellagio, but I certainly, and despite the victory over the Browns, my goodness, how sad was that? I can't. Anyway, I ranted in the first segment on them. I don't see that happening. I think the chemistry is such with our team. Let's face it, Cooper had such an unbelievable game 2 games ago, and he's still one of the best. So, no, I think the chemistry between him and Watson is vitally important to keep on going. And I do believe that, Adams may get his request because Raiders, I don't think, are going anywhere. But the Jets aren't either. They're not going anywhere. I watched their game the other day. They lost 10-9 and Rodgers and company. So that could go one way or the other. But we got to go one way, and that is to say goodbye for this round of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. And I am Bruce Drennan on behalf of Pat McGuire, who is subbing again for our pal Ryan Smith in mourning with a loss in his family. Now, we're going to be back with you next week. The playoffs will have begun by then. We'll be talking a lot with the guards. I'm going to get a special guest in for baseball. We'll also be covering pro and college football and, of course, the Cleveland Browns as we continue here on Bonus Time with Drennan. So until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio.